Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart for those of you that are new. And today I'll be breaking down this 7-game NBA slate here for Wednesday night on DraftKings, doing an early look slate breakdown. I'll be talking through who I like, who I don't like, kind of have an early look player pool where I'll throw guys into the lineup. For you guys of my early interest guys, as always, make sure to stay up to date with the injury news because it does change and affect the whole slate and how we want to attack and build our lineups for tomorrow night. So let's get right into this. So we still have some games going on tonight, as you guys can see. So just want to dive into this game real quick, or this slate, I mean. Starting off here with the Raptors and Hornets, 6.5 point spread, 225 total. Cavs and Wizards, 10.5 point spread, 235 total. So obviously that's huge blowout risk there because the Cavs have been probably the best team in the NBA the past, 16, 17 games. I think they're, 15-1, 16-1, something like that. Hawks, Celtics, 11.5 point spread, 244 total. So great game total. It's just a lot of blowout risk there. Spurs, Heat, 7.5 point spread, 224 total. Warriors, 76ers, 1 point spread, 237 total. Pelicans, Clippers, 6.5 point spread, 235 total. And then Pistons, Kings, 12.5 point spread, 244 total. So as we can see, there's a few games that do have blowout risk, but they are good game totals. So if you want to get different, we can definitely attack those to get a little bit different from the field. But obviously, it has blowout risk. So jumping into this first game here, as I mentioned, as I always mention with Cleveland right now, with a fully healthy team, they're just all kind of secondary options for me. I always think Donovan Mitchell is going to be your best bet, your safest option. I mean, he's going to be the main man, has led them to this fantastic run so far. So he looks great as a spend up. If you do want to get different, I think there's better ways to get different and better ways to, kind of spend your money in that 10K range. But it's a fantastic matchup. We always love targeting the Wizards, even though there is blowout risk. So I do like these guys just because the matchup makes them even more viable. But yeah, still all strong secondary options. I think Mitchell is still a fringe tier 1 option. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts there. Mobley's minutes have been going up a little bit more, even though he's been super productive in his limited minutes. It's just one of those things, they're all still shoulder shrug secondary options for me. Nothing too crazy on the Cleveland side. Moving on to the Washington side here. As I always say, if this game stays close, it's going to be because of Kyle Kuzma. He's all the way down to 7.6K, the cheapest price tag we've pretty much seen all season for him. And we know he can go easily for 50 plus. So yeah, I think he's a fine option if you do think this game's going to stay close. If you do want to get different, you can definitely look to a guy in Cleveland like Donovan Mitchell and then bring back with a Kyle Kuzma there. Denny, he's there in the mid-range. That's about it. Tyus Jones has some upside. It's just, the production is all over the place. It's really hard to trust him there, especially at the price tag. Same thing with Poole, GPP option, but, he's been horrific this season. Gafford, I have interest in just because they're going to need him in his height guarding Jared Allen, Evan Mobley. So he should be in line to see a heavy amount of minutes, 30 plus, if he can stay out of foul trouble. That's just the risk with him. As you can see, he's been pretty productive. 5.8K for a guy who can go for 30, 40 plus. Double upside, can get blocks. It's just one of those things, can this game stay close? Can he stay out of foul trouble? If that happens, if you think yes for both, I do think Gafford's a pretty interesting play. The rest of the team here, sure, he can play a blowout run slip and go with Bilal, but he's priced up to 4.5. Kispert's priced up to 4.4. It's, not really getting any crazy discounts on these guys if you did want to go the blowout risk route. Moving on to Toronto here versus Charlotte. Charlotte's always a team we want to target, just like the Wizards, just like the Hornets, and just like the Spurs, and even Detroit. I mean, the four, obviously the worst teams in the league you want to target because they're god-awful. And the Hawks. So a lot of teams we do want to target, but obviously that leads to a ton of blowout risk. But on the Toronto side here, Scotty Barnes, 8.7. We know the upside is, huge with him. But I think I'd rather get to Quickly, who has not the same upside, but it has similar upside just with how many minutes he's playing, how many shot attempts he's shooting, the assist upside there as well. So I think Quickly is probably my favorite play right now on this Toronto side, just because of everything I just mentioned. But I think Barrett's a fine secondary option if you don't want to get too quickly. I mean, he's been really good on the Raptors in terms of his production. Pretty consistent compared to what he was on the Knicks. So 6.9 for him is a pretty strong secondary option. I still really like Podol. His minutes seem to be pretty solid since coming back from that injury. Only 20 there, obviously, is a blowout versus Houston, but then 33 in a close game. And even in a blowout there against the Pelicans, he still went for 28. So I think he should be in line to see close to 30, if not a few more, if it's going to be a close game here. I really like his upside because he's a guy who can stuff the stat sheet, get rebounds, get assists, get some points, get some blocks, get some steals. So I do have a good amount of interest in Podol here in this fantastic matchup against the Hornets. Schroeder, I think, is an okay play there, 5.8 for a guy who should see anywhere from like 20 to 30 minutes. I think it's fine if you land on him. Bruce Brown, kind of the same thing. His minutes are a little bit all over the place. Hard to trust him there. Gary Trent is questionable. If he misses again, I do think we could look to Grady Dick here as a value option. He's been getting a lot more runs since, they've kind of given up on the season. So 4.1 for him, obviously very scoring dependent, but, if he hits a few threes, he could easily pay off the price tag if you are looking for some cheap value. And then Thad Young did get the start in place of, I forget who it was, or he started the second half for someone. Maybe was it Gary Trent? Not 100% sure, but did start there. I mean, sure, if you're feeling frisky, you could definitely look to him as some cheap value, but I just don't think there's a need to get to him. Moving on to the Charlotte side here. For Charlotte, Bridges is once again still a very, very strong play. I mean, he's going to play all the minutes he can handle, going to shoot the ball probably 20 plus times if this game is close. As you can see, he has really, really good upside. So once again, very, very strong play there. Brandon Miller, same thing. All the minutes, all the shot attempts. He's been fantastic the past 3 games. As you can see, 50 bomb, 52 bomb, 52 bomb. I mean, price really doesn't move, so it's hard to not really like him and hard not to really like Bridges. I think PJ Washington is still a very strong play. Saw 34 minutes, shot it 14 times, was decently productive, went for 33.5, 5.7. I think that's a very interesting price tag for him. Evan's going to flock to Miller. Evan's going to flock to Bridges. It makes sense, but PJ Washington is a great pivot option and just a great option overall if you do want to get a little bit different at 5.7. Richards, I think, is fine. Kind of like a Gafford where he's not as productive, but he can definitely go for 30 plus if he gets the double-double upside. So I don't mind him. Hayward and Martin are questionable. Obviously, if one or both of them are back, it does kind of hurt the minutes a little bit for Miller and Bridges. Nothing too crazy. Maybe like 2 or 3 minutes from each most. I mean, they're still going to see probably 35 each. But it obviously would hurt the offensive production a little bit, but I still think they'd be really strong plays. And then it depends on, if Martin and Hayward are on a minutes limit. If they are, which I'm assuming they are just because Martin's knee, he's been unhealthy pretty much the past 2 years. I would assume he's going to be on a minutes limit. Same thing with Hayward, a guy who they're probably trying to trade. I would assume they're both going to be on a minutes limit. So even at those price tags, not a lot of interest for me, but it really takes out any of the value guys. Moving on to Atlanta here. Obviously, tough matchup against Boston. You hope this game stays close. If you think it does, Trae Young should be in line for a huge, huge game. And he's been fantastic, flying under the radar. Has made it into the All-Star game, filling in for, I forget who it is, but obviously Embiid and someone else were out, so Trae Young was able to fill in along with Scotty Barnes. But yeah, he looks like a really strong option. Murray, I think, is a fair price tag for him. Jalen Johnson's price tag hasn't moved, but we know the upside is there with him. Another one of those guys who's going to see a ton of minutes. Very, very productive. So I do like him. If you land on him, I want to go out of my way to play him, but if you do land on him, I think he's a pretty strong play. But right now for me, I really think Trae Young is the only standout play for me at that price tag. Otherwise, everyone's kind of priced about right. Sadiq Bey should see 30 plus minutes. Fine if you land on him. Same thing with Bogey. Should see anywhere from like mid-20s to possibly sneaking in the 30-minute range. They're going to need some scoring from everyone else besides Trae Young if they want to keep this game close. So sure, you can land on these secondary pieces, but nothing really, really stands out. Maybe getting back to Okongwu here. Played 34 minutes, stayed out of foul trouble for the most part, still had 4 fouls. I mean, he was productive offensively. He didn't do too much, rebound the ball. Only got 1 block, so nothing crazy. He was mega chalk, but I don't mind going back to him here at 5.7. Obviously, a tough matchup having to guard, Porzingis or, guys driving like Tatum and Brown, Holiday, White. So a lot of foul trouble risk for him, but he's definitely another option for tomorrow. And I will mention Hunter. He had a huge game off the bench there from last game. Hard to trust him going 10 of 12, 3 of 5 from 3. Very, very productive in only 19 minutes. So it looks like he's going to be on a minutes limit. Hard to trust that. Moving on to Boston here. Obviously, it's a fantastic matchup going against the Hawks. I do like the price tag on Brown at 8K. It's just one of those things when they're a fully healthy team, it's really hard to trust the production from any of these guys. Now, Holiday is questionable. If he's out, we can definitely load up on at least White and Tatum, and it definitely makes guys like Brown and Porzingis really, really viable, like really, really strong secondary options. That'd kind of be my ranking. I'd say if, Holiday's out, go to Tatum and White, and then you can either go to Brown and Porzingis if you do want to get a little bit more different. Otherwise, if Holiday's in, I think it's just kind of throwing a dart at a dartboard on who's going to have a good game. Obviously, the offense runs through Tatum still, but we've seen games where Brown steps up. We've seen games where White steps up, or Porzingis. I mean, it's a crapshoot, but I think that's really it. I mean, sure, you could look to Hauser or Pritchard if you're looking for, Hail Mary dart throws. They are there. They'll see the minutes, but hard to trust the production there with them. Moving on to Golden State versus Philly here. On the Golden State side, this team has pretty much turned into the Steph and Kuminga show. So I think they're both the only plays I'd really want to get to at their price tags. 7.2 for Kuminga. He's averaged, I think 25 the past 10 games for them. So he looks like a really, really strong play here. Draymond Green, if he's good to go here, which I think he should be in line to see 30-plus minutes. I think it's another very strong play. And then it's pretty much for me, these four main guys, Steph, Kuminga, Draymond, and Pods, who went for a double-double there. He's just playing a ton of minutes, played 38 minutes, went for 15, 11, and 3, 34 fantasy points, 6K. I mean, a lot to like there in the four main guys. If you want to get different, sure, you can land on Klay Thompson, 5.5. He's been god-awful. He's just in the dumps right now. Yeah, it's looking dark for him. But if you want to get different, he is probably one of the best GPP options because we know he can easily go out there and hit like 15 threes. And that's really it. I mean, Sarge minutes kind of collapsed there. Same thing with Trace Jackson Davis. It seems like, Steve Kerr is really set on Steph, Kuminga, Green, and Pod seeing a ton of minutes, and then splitting up minutes between Clay, Sarge, Jackson Davis, Looney as kind of the fifth option there for them. And he's even been playing Moody, Quinones, and as well as Santos. They've been playing a ton of minutes. Santos closed that game over Clay against Brooklyn. So he could be a value option. I mean, not going to be too productive, but if you're feeling risky, he's down there. And same thing with Lester. They're both down there. If you're looking for some very cheap value, who have been seeing some good run recently and have been, closing, at least Santos has. On the Philly side here, I still think Maxi's a very strong play. Got screwed with really, really early foul trouble there, so he just had a very terrible game because of that. But don't pay attention to that. He's still a very strong play. I really like Tobias. He put up pretty much a 40 bomb for me as a core play that last game. And Kelly Oubre was decently strong, kind of fluttered off in that second half. But Maxey and Harris should lead the offensive load. Kelly Oubre should be a strong secondary option, and then I don't have interest in Paul Reed right now just because he's still on a minutes limit with that illness. But if it's to go away, I do think there's some interest in me there at Paul Reed at 6.2K. Other guys I mentioned, Pat Bev, seen okay minutes. Same thing with Morris. But I really think you just should stay with the main guys, Maxey, Harris, and then maybe get into Kelly Oubre and Reed. Moving on to the Spurs here versus Miami. Pretty gross game here. But obviously, Victor, we know the upside with Victor. It's just one of the things. If you want to spend up for him, I think it's fine. I mean, we're not going to see 30 minutes, but as you can see, the dude's averaging pretty much 50 fantasy points in about 28 minutes, which is crazy. Double-double machine, an insane amount of blocks and steals. I mean, it's hard not to like him as a spend up, even in a gross matchup. The rest of the team, secondary options. I don't have a lot of interest in these guys. I mean, Vassal's been actually pretty decent recently, seeing a good amount of minutes, been pretty productive, but they're all going to be just strong, contrarian options. Nothing too crazy value-wise. I mean, Trey Jones has been fine, but you're not getting anyone at a discount here on this team. Besides, I would probably say Wemby, even though he's on a minutes limit. But yeah, they've always just kind of been an avoid team for me. I just don't think there's a need to get to any of these guys. I'd rather pay up or pay a little bit down with these mid-range guys. And then when it comes to Victor, I'll play him at times, but I mean, 8.8K for a guy who's only going to see 30 minutes, even though he's been super productive. It's just hard to trust even in this matchup. So the Spurs are just more so a stay away team for me for this game tomorrow. On the Miami side, obviously it's a fantastic matchup. Miami tonight, they're just lackluster with this starting lineup of Rozier, Hero, Butler, and Bam. Obviously the four main offense guys. The offense is still gross. They're still trying to figure it out. And with that in mind, it's just hard to get to any of these guys, even at their price discounts. There's just way better options across the board to get to who have more minutes, who have more usage and upside compared to these guys. So once again, another one of those teams, if you're looking to get different, sure you can land on a Jimmy, sure you can land on a Bam, but I just don't think there's a need to get different with this team. Moving on to Detroit versus Sacramento here. Detroit side, it's a good matchup. I actually do like this matchup. I do think Detroit could probably keep it close. The Kings have been in some pretty brutal blowouts recently. They've been playing bad. So I do think the Pistons could have a chance here if Cade's good to go. If that's the case, I do like Cade at 7.9, and I do like Duren at 6.9. I do think they're pretty strong contrarian options. Ivy is fine. I mean, he's playing a ton of minutes finally. Even with Cade back, he's still seeing good minutes. So I don't mind if you land on him, but this team is more secondary options. Bogdan, we know he can go for a good amount of points if he hits his shots. But that's really it. They're kind of there. Nothing too crazy in terms of, value plays. Asar, if he's going to see kind of the mid-20s minutes, sure you can land on him. But right now, I'd really just stick with the two main guys in Cunningham and Durham. And a good matchup here, good fast-paced matchup against the Kings. Kings side really likes the bonus, really like Fox. Once again, Fox is just way too cheap here. Obviously, they got blown out there against Cleveland. But before that, he put up a 63 bomb against Chicago. So really like him here in this matchup against the Kings, the Pistons here. Murray and Monk, I think, are pretty strong GPP options. I'd side with Monk just because he's point guard shooting guard eligible, 5.4K, and he's pretty productive. So if he has a good game, he's usually going to go out there, get a couple of rebounds, a couple of assists, and can easily go for 20 plus points, 5.4K. I do think he's a pretty strong and interesting play for tomorrow. And you can pair him with Fox because they're both able to have really strong games. They don't really eat into each other's usage too much there. And obviously, if you think Monk is going to have a strong game, it really means that Herter is not going to have a strong game, and he'll probably lose his minutes. Him and Barnes are kind of the two main guys that will lose a few minutes. Obviously, Barnes will only lose a few, but Herter will lose a lot if Monk is playing well off the bench. And then Trey Lyles is always, a value center option. And then moving on to the last game here, Pelicans versus the Clippers. Pelicans side, Brandon Ingram went for a monster game there against Toronto. 68 fantasy points, 41 real life points there. 7.9 once again. As I always say, if all three of these guys are healthy, Ingram's probably the guy with the most upside. CJ's probably the safest, and then Zion's kind of in between them. He can have good games, but for the most part this season, he's just been very underwhelming fantasy point wise. Even at that price discount, just not a lot for me to like here. Now, if Zion's out, obviously Brandon Ingram and CJ, you're going to want to get to at least one of them. And as I said that last breakdown yesterday, Trey Murphy will probably be that third option I have a lot of interest in if there's no Zion. Now, if there's Zion, all these guys are just secondary options. Nothing too crazy for me in terms of guys I like. I do think it's one of those games where J-Val could see, a little bit less limit, little less minutes, just because, the Clippers could go small. They do have Zubac, but they at times will not play him a ton of minutes. If that happens, we could look to, you could take a shot on a guy like Larry Nance, who's kind of averaging in that 15 to 20 minute range, but could get extended. We have seen games where he goes for 20 plus, 30 plus fantasy points. So if you're looking for a cheap value, Larry Nance could be your guy. But once again, the news really just depends on Zion. Hopefully we get it in before the games, the slate starts. Otherwise, if you're trying to be a shark, you could definitely, build your lineup around the fact that maybe he misses. You get those guys at extremely low ownership. And if they have a good game, you're going to be pretty solid and well set for being able to cash, potentially take down, depending on how your other picks do. But on the Clippers side here, the only interest I have is Kawhi. He's been fantastic, flying under the radar with how well he's been doing. Maybe taking a shot on Zubac in GPP settings. We know he has huge upside. But other than that, it's not a lot of interest for me in this team. I mean, everything's just kind of running through Kawhi, Harden, and Paul George. And they're kind of all priced about right. I would say Harden's probably a little bit too pricey, even though he's only almost gone for a triple-double the past 2 games there. But when all 3 of them are healthy, the offense is going to go through Kawhi. Paul George will have those random games where he goes off, and then Harden will kind of be that even state guy where he'll kind of go for 35 to 45 fantasy points. And then obviously if he has a really good game, 50 plus. But yeah, that's the breakdown for right now. As I said, we do have some interesting, injury news in terms of Cade, in terms of Zion there that could definitely change the slate and how we want to attack it. Same thing with Draymond Green and a few of these other guys like Holiday. So do have some interesting news there, but that is the slate breakdown. Hope you guys like it. Hit that like button. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.